Perhaps the age of miracles isn't dead. Not only in foggy London town, but here in clear, beautiful Greater Danbury, Connecticut. I was able to hook up my camera and connect to the internet and start streaming apparently live and apparently right at the crack of 7 p.m. Oh my gosh. A minimum of falderall, a minimum of BS, and now a maximum, if you will, of Tent Talks Tunes, baby. Yes, it's happening, guys. I've said many times before, and I'll say it again. You can set your calendar to it. You can set your watch by it. 7 o'clock p.m. on Wednesdays, Eastern Standard Time. Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise, or if I'm not on tour somewhere, I bring you Tent Talks Tunes. Yes, keeping the spirit of cable TV alive. How do you like the visual field behind me? Lots of nice open space above me. Attractive backdrop. Straight from the same people who decorated UHF Channel 51 in Fort Lauderdale. Yes, if you're from Florida, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Same decorative ethos. But we're doing it now here on the internet, live on my Facebook page every Wednesday at 7, and archived forever, such as we understand it, on my YouTube channel, which I, of course, always have to draw your attention to. My YouTube channel and Facebook itself, of course. Let's get centered here so people can see my backdrops correctly and properly. You know, I do this thing every single week, and you would think that it would be the same setup every single week, the same tripod setting, the same camera setting, put my chair in the same place, put the backdrop in the same place. But no, it's never the same. Entropy always wins. Chaos is the natural state of the universe, and order is merely the briefest snapshot of a chaotic state. And every time that I set up to do Tent Talks Tunes, I'm reminded that chaos really does rule the universe, because the tripod, even though I set it to perfection last week, when I put the tripod on this week, it's completely wrong. I put the backdrop in the exact same place, I think, every week, but nope, it's never framed the same way. It's never quite the same distance. I put my chair, you would think, in the exact same spot every single week, so I should be framed perfectly. Nope. I had to move the chair over this away. It's chaos, guys. The second law of thermodynamics. Everything is winding down. In fact, I'm going to do something I don't normally have to do. I'm going to get my booster here so I can have a little more vertical representation here in the frame. Once again, you'd think it'd be the same every week, but no. I'm doing all this live before your very eyes here. But you know what? It's good. I love doing this. I don't mistake my kvetching for complaining. You know, you got to kvetch sometimes. You just got to tell it like it is, because that is what it is. Chaos and entropy are what they are. And all we do is surf on the crest of the wave and continue to do what we do. Let's grab a jug of Danbury Tap and raise a toast to the forces of order and chaos. Hello, Benjamin Martin. Hello, Tony Arena. Hello, Jennifer Crawford. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Dennis Highland, a whole bunch of other people whose names I can only see a few of. I wonder if I reach over here and click a button, if I'll be able to see everybody's name. Yeah, we got some names. Yeah, Eric. Yeah, Alan. Sean. Thanks, guys. I'm seeing lots of hearts and thumbs ups and happy faces. Mondo Braswell is tuned in from the great state of Hickory, North Carolina. How's things with the hot topic, Mondo? Are you watching Tent Talks Tunes on the job right now? I hope so. I really do. I really want you to be watching my show on the corporate clock, because that's the best way to do it. Woo! Lord have mercy. Adam Zisser from Atlanta. Hello, Adam. Good to have all you guys in here. Man, I got so much going on here. It is utterly ridiculous. It's funny, I was watching Jeff Clayton, my boss in the almighty anti-scene. As you should know, if you've seen Tent Talks Tunes more than once, I've name-checked Jeff Clayton a number of times. He's got his own streaming show called Break On Through, which airs now on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Yes, 8 p.m. And he's on every week, and he kind of does the same thing I do, like lots of talk about music, fashion, culture, with his own particular spin on the matters, and of course an emphasis on the history and doings of the almighty anti-scene. So he was on yesterday doing Break On Through, and he was talking about how he's just got all these records and things that he just doesn't listen to anymore and is kind of tired of hauling around and babysitting. I said, brother, I can relate to that. I am in a position right now that is utterly absurd. You want to talk about chaos being the natural state of the universe? Check this out. My little cabin in the woods, which I love so much, was built sometime in the late 1920s, maybe 1930s, no one knows for sure, as just that, a cabin in the woods. You know, it was meant for summer getaways, for people to go down to the river and fish or do whatever, and, you know, just be here for a few weeks or a couple of months in the summer. So it was built of, like, basically very thin, flimsy materials, and there was no need for insulation during the summertime, obviously, so no insulation. And I've been learning the hard way in the years that I lived here that wintertime in Connecticut is cold. It's cold. Can I get an amen on that? Anybody who's ever experienced a New England winter knows for ding-dong-dang-damn fact that it is cold in the winter. And living in my little cabin in the woods with no insulation, it's cold in the winter. And, you know, I can always just turn on the heat and put on a few sweatshirts. You guys have seen me broadcast during the winter months. I've always got on some sweatshirts and a few pairs of jammies, and it's all right. But what with the wonderful, wonderful electricity company called Eversource here in Connecticut having recently tripled everybody's electric bills, it's just not really enough to bundle up and live in a cabin in the woods without any insulation. I had to get proactive and get the place insulated. In order to do that, in order to get the floor space between the basement and the main cabin insulated, I was told I had to clear out all the stuff that I had in the basement so that the workers could, you know, walk around in the basement and put the fiberglass in there and, you know, have free access to all the places they need to have free access to. I took a deep breath, said, oh my God, and got to it. And I did indeed clear out the entire basement. You know one thing I don't want to do, guys and gals, men, women, brothers, sisters, bow-legged ants, birds, and mosquitoes? You know what I don't want to do? I don't want to just put all that stuff back in the basement. I have no desire whatsoever to have schlepped all that stuff out of my basement simply to put it back in the basement. It's kind of nonsensical, you know? It's like it's a deed worthy of Sisyphus. I do not engage in Sisyphusian tasks. It ain't my thing. You know who is my thing, though? Come on up and say hi to the people. Making his requisite appearance is Harry the cat. Hi, guys. Here's Harry. Everybody say hello to Harry. The camera hog himself. Mr. Photogenic. The 1.5-eared wonder. Well, he's a little bit shy today. I don't know why. What's up, little guy? You don't want the people to send you some loves? All right, he just wants to be on the... He just wants to get a little bit of lap here. Please don't stick that in my face. I'm not really a fan of cat butts. Not in my face. No. You just settled in there right there. Okay, you can see he's very comfortably settled in, right? We're just gonna let Harry settle in there and be comfy cozy, while I'm not kvetching. I'm simply stating a fact that it is pointless to take a bunch of stuff out of my basement just to put it back in the basement. And since it is my job to sell, you know, it's I'm always talking about my Discogs and my eBay and my Bandcamp under the name of TPOS. And I, built the foundation of my entire existence with a brick and mortar record store called Trash American Style. I think everybody knows that it's my job to hook you up with the stuff you need. And in this case, it is not merely rhetoric. It's a damn fact. I don't want this stuff in my basement anymore. I'm overstocked. I ain't putting it back in my basement. I'm not going to say all of it's got to go, but a lot of it's got to go. a lot of it's got to go. For example, do I really need the 6 original issues of the Infinity Gauntlet? No, I don't. I read it. It's good. It's definitely good. It's a damn sight better than Secret Wars. Okay, and if you comic book geeks and nerds are out there watching, you know what I'm talking about. Secret Wars #1 sucked. Secret Wars #2 was better. Infinity Gauntlet, infinitely better. But I don't need it. All 6 issues, don't want them. How about hardcore fanzines? You would be astonished, maybe, by the sheer number of hardcore fanzines I've got. That's a factoid I've talked about many a times here on Tent Talks Tunes and in real life, that when the store was active, I saved basically one of everything. One of every copy of every zine, especially the local ones. One of every local demo tape. One of every, especially local record. I saved them all. And I think that the time for me to be the caretaker of this stuff is come and gone. It's time to move it on to somebody who really is going to appreciate it and love it and want it and use it and not have it just sitting in a cardboard box in my basement. I mean, it's just kind of silly. Records, of course I got records. How about not one, but a stereo-matched pair of Talking Heads' Remain in Light art covers. Clear vinyl, giant oversized plastic sleeves. My basement is full of stuff like this. It's gotta go, kids. It's got to go. I don't want it anymore. How about Kiss board games and jigsaw puzzles? This is all original 1977-78. Don't want them no more. They got to go. They are in great condition and they are priced, well, not bargain basement, but I think reasonably. Keep an eye on this network, this internet, for more developments in the Malcolm Tent is getting rid of his shiz adventures. Because there are going to be more, and there's going to be some very interesting developments along those lines. All right, guys, let's check the bulletin board. Here's a very exciting development, which I'm going to drink to. As you know, as Chad Cochran knows and Murray Gelman knows, because they're regular watchers, I look at the bulletin board every week, and it's never in chronological order. It just is never in chronological order. Well, guess what? I organized it this week, and now it is in chronological order, even though I lost a critical display piece. Let's get that mounted back up there, so I can proudly, with great ego and much bravado, go through the items on the bulletin board in chronological order for the first time ever on Tent Talks Tunes. What do you guys think of that? Pretty exciting, huh? Man, that thing just doesn't want to stay up. If this was network TV, that'd be very embarrassing. But since this is cable TV, nobody could possibly G-A-F. Least of all me. All right, well, here we go. Coming up very soon. The days are flying by rapidly. September 22nd and September 23rd, my birthday weekend. The devotional Devo fan gathering. Friday and Saturday, Beachland Ballroom, Cleveland, Ohio. 2 solid days and 1 action-packed, well, let's rephrase that. Take 2. 2 solid nights and 1 jam-packed day of activities revolving around Devo, Devo culture, things Devo, devolved people, music, the whole works. Yes, I will be there, and not only that, I have been added to the performance schedule. I will be making a presentation on Saturday the 23rd, my birthday. I haven't exactly decided what I'm going to do yet, but it is not going to be anything I've ever done before. It's going to be a whole new thing. So put that in your corncob pipe and smoke it. Devotional, September 22nd, September 23rd, Cleveland. Be there. I will be. September 30th, Anti-Scene 40th Anniversary Gala Blowout at the Ground Zero in Spartanburg, South Carolina, our home away from home. Anti-Scene's Top 40 will be presented live on stage. 40 songs for 40 years. Played by the current Ultra lineup and featuring representations of several past lineups as well, doing songs from their respective eras of the bands. It's It's going to be really cool. We're going to have oh, there goes Harry. Bye, guy. See you later. A gala meet and greet before the show. A big-time photo opportunity after the show. And people are flying in from all over the world, all over the country, maybe even from all over the state of North Carolina. It should be a damn heck of a lot of fun. I've attended the 10th, 30th, and 35th as a fan. Now I'm playing the 40th as a full band member. Pretty cool, guys. So I can say truthfully, as a fan and attendee, if you love this band, it's going to be a blast. So don't miss it. That's my recommendation to you. Now the bit of visual that I keep losing here, maybe that's just the spirit of entropy saying that I should show you up close and personal what it is. It is the Red Squirrel Records Record Fair at Counterweight Brewing, which is in Cheshire. Yeah, you got it right. Cheshire, Connecticut. That is October 8th. I will be set up with a table groaning under the weight of many crates of awesome vinyl. Both used and new. Primarily used with a smattering of new, all carefully curated, if you will, by me, Malcolm 10, the guy who makes his living doing this stuff. So by all means, if you want to see me in action as a record retailer, Counterweight Record Fair hosted by Red Squirrel Records in Cheshire, Connecticut at the Counterweight Brewery, October 8th. And if for some bizarre reason you can't make that one, well, you got the Danbury Record and CD Expo, co-promoted by yours truly, at VFW Hall number 149 in Danbury. I'm going to have not one, not two, but 3 tables. 3 tables of wacky stuff. Records, tapes, CDs, full line of TPOS merch, whatever I can cram into my 11-year-old Dodge Caravan van and haul down there, along with a bunch of other record dealers. It's going to be fun. So that, my friends, is the bulletin board. Very quick check of the mailbox today. Because now I already had my show planned out. I knew exactly what I was going to do. So when I went to the post office today and found a couple of boxes from my main dog, Dennis Highland of Jackhammer Music in Mobile, Alabama. Dennis is, of course, the facilitator of the release on CD of the brand new Anti-Scene full-length entitled Great Disasters. And Dennis, oh, and by the way, people have been asking me if I have copies of Great Disasters on CD. We are waiting on the slow boat from Japan. And I'm not joking, it is a CD manufactured in Japan, and it is on a slow boat coming by surface mail, if you remember that, from Japan. Once the ship comes into Mobile port, and Dennis is able to get his consignment of Anti-Scene Great Disasters CDs, we're going to work out a deal. I will have some, he will have some, I'm sure Jeff Clayton will have some. One way or another, all you folks out there who want Great Disasters CDs will be able to get them. So there's something to look forward to. And of course, the vinyl is very much available from TKO Records, Jeff Clayton himself. So now you know. Anyway, and Scott Baldridge says, quote, and I quote directly, Scott, "What a great album! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark." If you ask me, I'm going to tell you he's right. Anyway, Dennis Highland, many episodes back in Tent Talks Tunes, sent me a thrift shop in a box. And we did a live unboxing of the contents of said box. And it was an awful lot of fun. Both you and I got to discover what was in this box live on a Wednesday at 7 p.m. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do the unboxing next week on Tent Talks Tunes, because I've already got today's show lined up. So put it on your calendar. 1 week from today, we're going to unbox the thrift shop in a box. And it's going to be pretty dang cool. We've done the thrift shop in a box. Adam Zister, my pal from Atlanta, sent the yard sale in a box. And it's fun because you never know. You just never know what kind of good and or bad and or awful stuff you're going to find at a thrift shop or a yard sale. So we got it right here. Next week, I'm really, really having to restrain myself from opening it up right now, but we got the show already planned, so a toast to having great patience. But we did get one item in the mail that I do want to show and I do want to tell, and I know exactly what it is because the word of this thing being released was announced while I was on tour with Profanatica last month. And I said, you know what? I better get on this thing immediately. My good pal Jade Dellinger from Tampa, Florida, is the author of what is perhaps the definitive biography of Devo. This is the first printing hardcover edition entitled Are We Not Men? We Are Devo. And I never want to read this book. I never want to read it. And you might ask, well, why? If you know me, you know that Devo is my favorite band of all time. Nobody even comes close to Devo. And this is a really good book. Seriously, excellent book. But I don't want to read it. You want to know why I don't want to read it? Because not only is this the first hardcover edition, but I made it my job to get it signed by every person mentioned in this book. If it's any Devo alum at all, and they're in this book, I wanted them to sign it. So yeah, we got a whole bunch of signatures there. I got to be very careful with this. I'll just take the slipcover off very quickly. Signatures there. Signatures there. Signatures scattered throughout the book. And of course the centerpiece of it, the Devo photo plate with signatures of what was in at the time the 4 surviving members of Devo. Bob, too, has since left this mortal coil, so he was a really nice guy. So I'm glad I got those signatures. So because of this being the first edition hardcover and just littered with signatures, I don't want to read it. You know, this is definitely a preservation piece. Not in my basement and not ever going to be sold during my lifetime if I can help it. So I was extremely happy to read that what we have here in the contents of this box is now available. Let's find out, shall we? We got the 10,000 mile box cutter. We got the box in question. We're going to cut it. We're going to cut it some more. We're going to cut it some more. We're going to put incisions all over this damn thing. The box is now open. The contents of the box shall be revealed. And this should present the answer to my dilemma about not ever wanting to read that book. Because now I can read a brand new updated version. In the beginning was the end. Devo in Ohio. Oh boy, Jade Dellinger does it again with his cohort David Geffels, who I believe supplies the Ohio history part of the narrative. This is, from what I'm told, an updated and expanded version of Are We Not Men? We Are Devo. And yeah, am I excited? You better believe it. The only reason that I'm not digging into this thing right now is, well, because I'm live with you guys, and it's kind of uncouth to sit here reading a book while I'm talking to everybody, so it'll just have to wait. So yeah, look it up, man, if you want what is undoubtedly going to be a great narrative history of DEVO in the early days of Ohio. Check it out. In the beginning was the end. All right. Now, I'm also going to mention, too, before we get going here, there's been a real uptick in interest in my various products lately. I don't know why, but some guy on Discogs, who looked up TPOS, ordered, I think, 25 different Bunny Brains cassettes, which is pretty cool. And then the next day, some guy ordered a big pile of Malcolm Tent solo CDs and cassettes, along with Ultra Bunny and They Hate Us and Fried Man and MT Power Duo. And then some guy, my good pal Ness Head, contacted me and said, hey, I just heard about your Devo photo books. Can I get the second one? Because I already got the first one on Amazon. I said, absolutely, you may. A version of this is available on Amazon, but I'm just going to tell everybody right now that the print quality on the Amazon version, no es bueno. The one you get from me, es bueno. And of course, Volume 2, you can only get from me, featuring a ringing endorsement from Mark Brothersbaugh himself. Yay! It's women in devolved settings. All people who I know personally. It's my pal Robin from New Jersey. She's a true artist and a musician in her own right. There's Janice from Illinois. Hello, Janice. I don't know if you're watching, but I hope you are. We got Allie from Buffalo. Yes. These are real women in real devolved settings. Photographs taken by a real Devo fan, me. So if you want either of these, talk to me. I will hook you up. I'm always happy to sign the darn things. Why not deface something with an autograph? If you can. A toast to ego. Okay, let's get right down to the matter of Tent Talks Tunes. Now, because of the aforementioned situation with my basement and the fact that I had to clear everything out of there, and my little cabin in the woods is just, you should see it. It looks like a basement, oddly enough, with just boxes of stuff everywhere. Getting the place insulated is definitely cool, but one of the real unexpected benefits and side effects, and one of the kind of fun things about it, was unpacking all these boxes and bringing them up. I was curious as to what was in them. You know, obviously wasn't going to look at every single box or the contents thereof, but I was also on a quest to look for a couple of certain specific fanzines featuring G.G. Allin, which is going to, which will feature in an upcoming release that I'm doing on TPOS. Not at liberty to talk about it in great detail right now, except that it will be a, well, I'll tell you what it is. It will be a CD DVD package featuring the most complete, definitive collection of materials relating to the night that we booked G.G. Allin at SUNY Purchase in New York. There's already a 7-inch single of it. We're going to do a CD and DVD as well. And so I've been pestering everybody I know who was at the show to either write a few sentences about their experience there or help a brother out with some printed materials. And one of the things I was looking for was a copy of Dumpster Dive magazine, which featured an interview by our good pal John Sexbomb Coletti. He interviewed Gigi and the Disappointments that night at SUNY Purchase and printed the interview in his zine. So I really wanted to find that zine so I could scan it and put it in the photo gallery of the DVD. Mr. Baum has since furnished a scan of the magazine. Very kind of you. Thank you, sir. But while I was looking for the zine, I came across these boxes and boxes of magazines that I had. And I found some very important cultural touchstones in my life. And I wanted to share them with you. I'm going to do this in basically... Let's make sure, once again, we have this in real proper chronological order. I think I do already. But I'm just going to double check by looking at the copyright dates on these. Okay, so that would definitely be first. And this, I'm pretty sure, would be second. Yes. Okay, yeah, got it. First, second. This will be third. This will be right around second. Oh, actually, that's second. All right. Getting organized live before your very eyes, kids. And there was one other piece of display, and it fell over. Another thing that fell over, gravity always wins, along with entropy. They make gravity and entropy make for a very potent combination, let me tell you. Go over here and grab it. You can hear by the sound of it, you know what it is. You can hear the sound of it. I'm just curious to see what's going on here because, as is quite often the case, it is the internet, and it's finicky and weird, and we don't know if it's still working or not. So I'm just going to do a quick refresh over here and see what's going on. And Jeff Clayton was talking about this yesterday. We're going out live, and at a certain point, like, all the reactions stop appearing and the comments stop appearing. It doesn't mean that you guys aren't reacting and commenting. It means we just can't see it. So we got to make sure that we are indeed still live, and apparently we are. So anyway, important cultural touchstones. How on earth did the young suburban kid in unincorporated northwest Dade County become the guy right here doing Tent Talks Tunes many, many, many years later? How did it happen? Well, I got to tell you. Maybe some of you folks out there can relate to the experience I'm about to relate to you. I grew up in a suburb. It was like our mailing address technically said Hialeah, but we weren't anywhere near the city of Hialeah. We were in unincorporated northwest Dade. We lived in a housing development. And like every suburban housing development ever, it was built around a shopping center. One of the key selling points to the developers who wanted to lure the stores into the shopping center was that they would have people in a neighborhood to be their customers. So the centerpiece of our suburban development was the shopping center. And the shopping center had all the stuff that you needed to live in the suburbs. It had a grocery store, it had a convenience store, it had a hair salon, a hardware store, a doctor, a dentist, a real estate agent. There was a ceramic studio, an ice cream parlor where I spent many hours shooting pinball in the summer of 75 and 76 and beyond even. A dance studio, dry cleaners, just all the regular stuff you'd find in the burbs. And, retail's in my blood. That's just the kind of guy I am. I've always, since being a kid, was just in love with going to stores and going to flea markets. And when I discovered thrift shops, I was really in heaven. So I'm kind of hardwired for the marketplace. And so it was always like a big adventure and an awful lot of fun to hear Mom say, "Hey, I'm going to the store. Want to come along?" It was a very rare occasion when I said no. I almost always said yes, because it didn't matter if we were just shopping for groceries or just going to the drive-through farm store to get a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread. I just loved the entire experience. I still do to this day, love grocery shopping. I just like it. I'm one of those weirdos who really enjoys grocery shopping. And so that was like the big day. The big event of the day was to go to the store. And, sometimes I didn't want to hang out with Mom, especially when I started to reach a certain age. Because I was born in 1964, so we're getting into me being at the age of 9 and 10 and starting to mature a little bit. I didn't want to be with Mom at the grocery store, but I did want to, go to the shopping center. So Mom would go to the grocery store, and I would wander off by myself and go to the shopping center. And usually I would end up at the drugstore. And to this day, I don't even know if the drugstore even had a name. I mean, obviously it had a name, but we just knew it as the drugstore. Go to the drugstore, okay. And, our drugstore was, out of all of the stores in our shopping center, it was the coolest out of them all. Like the grocery store had a lot of great stuff, the convenience store had a lot of great stuff, but the drugstore, they had all the cool, fun stuff, They had, they had the pharmacy, they had a little tiny satellite post office in the back, they had the cosmetics counter, they had a couple of aisles of aspirin and suppositories and all the usual drugstore stuff. But the fun part of the drugstore was they had an aisle of stationery and office supplies. I love that aisle. I still love that aisle. I still love going to a big box stationery and office supply store, even though it is a big box. It's still stationery and office supplies. I just love those things. I love reams of paper and markers and bottles of glue and, staples and, thumbtacks. I just love all that stuff. So there was an aisle of that. There was a toy aisle. There was a gift shop in the back. And that stuff was all really cool. But and a bodacious candy counter. They had the best candy counter in the entire shopping center. Better than the convenience store, better than the grocery store. They had a badass candy counter. And the best vending machines, too. Oh, man, the best bubblegum machines ever anywhere. They also had the best magazine department in our little suburban paradise. They had a great, awesome, well-stocked magazine rack, which meant they also had a comic book spinner. One of those circular racks that stands on the floor. It spins around, and it's got all the latest comic books on it. And I don't know, there wasn't anything in particular that said, boy, you have to buy a comic book today, because comic books are going to enlighten you and help point you to your destiny. It wasn't anything more than that. It was just a not even bored, but like a curious, sort of restless 9-year-old kid at the drugstore saw this spinner rack full of comic books and just kind of was idly looking at them. And for some reason, by whatever strange, bizarre alchemy that was in play, just happened to see this issue of Fantastic Four, number 151. What's the cover date on that? Cover date is October of 1974, which means most likely it actually came out around maybe July, August of 74, because these things were always post-dated. They always dated them a few months ahead of what the actual release date was. Maybe somebody out there knows what the actual formula was. I'm not really sure. Dated October 74, so I was 9 going on 10 when I saw this issue of Fantastic Four, and for some strange, unknowable, unfathomable reason, got out my 26 cents, because you can see it's a 25-cent cover price, plus 1 cent for tax. Plunked down my 26 cents and went home and was completely blown away by the contents of Fantastic Four number 151. It was just what I needed at that time. It was superheroes, it was, fights, it was bigger than life, but it was also intelligent dialogue, really good vocabulary, believable characters, plausible situations, considering who these people are. A guy who bursts into flame and a guy covered in rocks and some guy with stretchy arms. Considering all that, it was very plausible and very, very realistically written and very human. So it was good to read, even though for many, many years, I never ever read the caption boxes, But as you can see by this layout, you weren't necessarily missing much if you didn't read the caption boxes, because the panels and the artwork and the dialogue bubbles, told the majority of the story. So I was always able to, get the real gist of it without reading the caption boxes. It wasn't until quite a few years later that I started reading the caption boxes and realized that maybe these things are even better. The stories are even deeper. The characters are even more interesting. Like that one panel there, Mr. Fantastic on his Fantastic Cycle. All caption boxes. Took me a very, very, very long time to actually read them. But this started a long time love of comic books. And when I say comic books, I mean Marvel comic books. And I don't GAF. And this is a theme you're going to hear recurring on this episode of Tent Talks Tunes. I don't GAF about the current Marvel product. I've never seen a Marvel movie other than the cheesy TV ones that were on in the 1970s and the unreleased Roger Corman version of the Fantastic Four. I've never seen the movies. I don't buy the current comics. My interest is solely in the Marvel comics of 1974 to about 1981. Actually, I'll go a little bit further than that. 85, 86. I had a renaissance of re-interest in Marvel comics when I was living on South Beach in the summer of '85, maybe going into '86. And that was cool because the story writing and the art had really evolved. As good as it was in the mid-'70s, by the mid-'80s, it had gone up to a whole other level in terms of storytelling, character development, the art itself, you know. So it was able to keep my jaundiced punk rock mind thoroughly educated and entertained by reading the Marvel comics of the mid-'80s. I couldn't give a fat rat's ass about the corporate version of Marvel Comics now. I don't, I can't, I won't. F all that. To me, this is the reality of it. 1974 to about 1986. Love this stuff. And this was the first, this is not the actual copy of it, but this is the first comic book I ever bought. Fantastic Four number 151. And I found this at, I think, the flea market a few years back. Saw it, paid $1 for it, read it cover to cover, and read the caption boxes. Was completely taken back and still amazed by how good the writing was and how cool the art was. So that was just sitting in a box in my basement. Of course, being born to collect and being born to dig deep into the history of things and research things and get the backstories on things, I, of course, saw that, well, if that was Fantastic Four number 151, that means there's 150 issues prior to that one I just bought. So I wanted to read them all, basically. And as I bought more comic books and got more into the Marvel universe and realized that there were tons of characters and tons of books, I wanted to know about them all, you know. And, you know, growing up in a sterile, ugly suburb of South Florida, which was built in 1969, I've always been fascinated by places and things with a deeper history. You know, anything older than 1969, you know, to me is just like ancient Rome practically, you know. Anything with any kind of depth or width or story or history behind it, I just love. I love. I consider that to be a byproduct of my suburban damage, is that I'm certainly heavily into places like Connecticut, you know, where, you know, everything around you has roots going back to the 1600s, you know. Even my little cabin in the woods is almost 100 years old. I mean, that's pretty cool. I really like that. So I was always that way, and I was, once again, completely gobsmacked, mind blown, thrown for a loop in all the good ways when I went to the school library one day when I was in 6th grade. Our librarian, whose name was Mrs. Gregory, she was the best. She was totally keyed into what we, the kids, wanted to read. She knew how to talk to us. She listened to us. If we wanted certain books in the library, she'd order them for us. And one day, she said that she thought it'd be really cool because she knew a bunch of us were into comic books. She said, well, why don't you guys bring in a bunch of your favorite comic books and we'll have a comic book table. And a bunch of people brought in their comics and just placed them on the table for people to read. And I don't think borrow, I think they were there permanently, but they were just there for anybody to read in the library, these comic books. And my eyes went like this, and my mouth probably went like this. When I looked at the comic book table and saw what, to me, was a justifiable, bona fide antique. Something that was way ancient and before my time. And it was, once again, not this very copy of it, but this issue of Tales of Suspense, featuring Iron Man and Captain America, with a 12-cent cover price and this amazing corner icon. To me, this was as good as finding the Dead Sea Scrolls. When was this thing published? Copyright date on this one is buried somewhere. December of 1965. Wow. Cover date, December 1965. So it was probably published in September of 1965 when I was a year old. So everything about it was different, you know, even from the Fantastic Four from about, 9 years later. Like the color scheme was different, the graphic style was different, the art on the inside was a lot more crude and a lot more primitive. You know, you take a look at the illustration style of Don Heck and the lettering of Artie Simek. You can see how stiff and wooden it is compared to what Rich Buckler was doing in that Fantastic Four issue. It was just a whole different thing, and the fact that it was from the 1965 when I was only a year old really, really, really got my goat. And so that set me on the hobby of collecting back issues big time. And it was around that time I discovered a comic book shop in Hialeah that had a room full of back issues. And so a lot of my allowance and lawn mowing money went to back issues of comics. And one of the things that you kind of regret, you kind of don't, was that in order to finance my move to Connecticut from Florida, I had to sell my entire comic book collection. And got well, I'll have to admit, I didn't really take very good care of them. I read the things almost to death. And I stored them jam-packed into these file cabinets that I had in my room. So they were pretty beat up, and I didn't get much money at all for them. And I had to do it because I had to move to Florida. I had to move to Connecticut and open up Trash American Style, and I couldn't be hauling all this stuff around. So I had to sell the comic books. And it's always been in the back of my mind that if I find anything that I had back in the day from my original collection and it's cheap, I'll grab it. So that's why I have Fantastic Four number 151 and Tales of Suspense number 72, which were really key elements for me in my discovery of comic books. I got them cheap. They're in my personal collection now, which is not very big at all of comic books, but they're all really cool. Now, something else I found a few months later, because this has an April of 1975 cover date on it. Another one of those things, I don't know why I grabbed it. I really couldn't tell you what the tipping point is, except I vaguely remember my father somewhere along the line telling me that Mad Magazine was really cool. And maybe that was in my mind when I was just kind of wandering around the drugstore one day and looked at the magazine rack, as I always did, and found this issue of Mad Magazine and decided to plunk down the large sum, 50 cents. It said cheap, but man, for 50 cents, I could buy 2 comic books, or 2 candy bars, or 2 sodas. You know, a Mad Magazine was twice as expensive as the other goodies that my allowance money went to. But it was also bigger, it was bigger size. It was still pretty thick. And I was definitely taken aback at first because the illustration style was completely different from comic books. It was black and white. The word bubbles were square. The letter, the text was printed instead of handwritten. It was a bit of an adjustment culturally, but oh my God, I just fell in love with it. This is the funniest, my sort of humor. Funny, smart, irreverent, always kicking sacred cows. Really just kind of jerked the chain on my sense of humor. They were also very anti-smoking, which, having grown up in a house with a couple of chain smokers in it, I was all about that. So I liked that for sure. Mad Magazine, kids. Cover date April 75. I think I bought every single issue of Mad that there was for, I don't even know how many years after that. And this is at a time when I was not actively collecting records. This is the time when a record cost $5.99. So in between my jags of record collecting, instead of spending $5.99 on one single record, 50 cents for Mad, 25 cents for comic books, 25 cents for candy bars. My allowance money got me a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Including something that I saw once again at the drugstore magazine rack. This is a cover date of October 75. Okay, October of 1975. Now I definitely have to blame the old man for my love of this particular sport. Somewhere along the line, I think he was sitting in the big chair in the living room, smoking as always, drinking a bush as always, and for some reason he had Championship Wrestling from Florida on the TV. And this is kind of weird. This is a little bit bizarre. Pardon me while I wet my whistle for a sec. I've told this story before, but it's worth telling again. My only experience to professional wrestling when I was very young was being at my grandma and granddad's house on Sundays after church. We would all go to grandma and granddad's house after church, and grandma would make a big old lunch, and we would sit in the dining room, around the dining room table, and they had a little black and white TV off to the side. And my grandma would turn on the professional wrestling and watch it while we ate supper after church. And I remember distinctly the midget wrestlers. And I was probably 5 or 6 years old at the time, very, very young. I remember watching the midget wrestlers and thinking, that's kind of disturbing. That's weird. I don't know if I like this. And then, the regular wrestlers, the regular full-size guys, I don't know who it was, having a wrestling match. And my grandma, the church treasurer, who just made us this great big supper, sitting at the table, watching these guys wrestle, going, "Oh, get him! Don't let him do that! You stupid referee, can't you see what they're doing there? Oh, get him! No, don't let him do that! She's freaking out while we're all like, okay, Grandma. Yeah, you go." She's like, at the table. So the whole experience was quite bizarre, quite disturbing, and I was pretty sure that I did not like this professional wrestling stuff because it made my grandma act really bizarre. Fast forward a few years, and I remember watching some of the matches on this episode of Championship Wrestling from Florida. There's a tag team match featuring Rocky Johnson and Tiger Conway Jr. Rocky Johnson, of course, being the father of The Rock. It was Rocky Johnson and Tiger Conway Jr. versus Killer Carl Krupp and Cyclone Negro. There was also a match with Terry, recently departed, God bless him, Terry Funk and Dory Funk Jr. versus Bob Roop and Harley Race. I remember those two matches. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but my brain was ready for it. I just thought it was so cool and so exciting. The drama of seeing, and I really want to say that it was Harley Race full body pressing Terry Funk over his head and standing there before he body slammed him. Wow. And seeing Tiger Conway Jr., man, with his face covered in blood, and, Cyclone Negro and Killer Carl Krupp. I mean, these were characters. These were real larger-than-life characters. Rocky Johnson with the Johnson Shuffle. Terry Funk. He wasn't quite the madman that he was later, but he had that charisma, And Harley Race just looked evil. Bob Roop was reprehensible. Okay, I found my sport. Because I've always hated sports. Hated football, hated baseball. We didn't have hockey. Hated basketball. I hated all that bullshit. But professional wrestling, now that I could get into. I found my sport. And so soon after that, while I was at the drugstore looking at the magazines, I saw this. I'm sure I probably saw them before, but this was the first time I definitely noticed one of the great Bill Apter wrestling magazines, Inside Wrestling. Yes. Cover date October 1975. You'll notice the stakes are getting a little bit higher. I started out with 25-cent comic books, graduated to 50-cent Mad magazines. Check out the cover price on that one, kids. Can you see that? 75 cents. Woo! Okay, now I got to go to the drugstore with my allowance week every money. And we've got comic books, we got Mad magazine, we got wrestling magazines. Even if I just buy one of each, that's like $1.50 right there. And I might have. I think my allowance was. Oh God, I don't think it was even $5. I don't think I'd cracked the $5 mark at that point yet. So, between that and candy bars and the gumball machine, my allowance money was getting eaten up at a rapid pace. Luckily, this only came out once a month. Mad only came out once a month. Each individual title of comic book only came out once a month. So I was able to spread it all out and, keep myself entertained and occupied. But yeah, I read this thing from cover to cover, and I discovered about all these wrestlers who did not wrestle in championship wrestling from Florida. Other promotions like the WWWF, that's 3 W's, WWWF, the AWA, the IWA, characters like Dick the Bruiser, Mil Mascaras, awesome stuff. Check this out. Inside Wrestling, pinup number 30, featuring a very promising rookie named Ric Flair. Now, don't look at that ad on the other side of Ric Flair. You're not supposed to see that. Remember, this is, October of 1975, and you're about to turn 11 years old. I mean, I didn't even know what this thing was, I didn't even know what titty balls were at the age of 11. I didn't care either. I was into the wrestling and the blood. But even so, there they are. Right next to the rookie, Ric Flair. Note the spelling of his name, too. That's Rick. Sorry, I keep going to the spy eye, guys. Rick with a K, Flair. Yeah. Pretty cool. In the very first issue of Inside Wrestling I ever bought. And that, along with Mad and the comics, really set me down a path that I have really never, ever strayed from. And Jeff Clayton talked about this a little bit last night on Break On Through. Much respect to you guys who still follow the current wrestling product. I'll say it right now. I don't GAF about the current product. I am definitely impressed by the athleticism of the current wrestlers because it's far beyond anything that I ever experienced when I was a kid. But, I cannot stand the fact that everything is so tightly scripted and that the wrestlers themselves are so schooled in acting and everything is all... every wrestler you see has got the same stock facial expressions and the same stock poses. And, nothing's original or improvised or spontaneous anymore. It's all carefully laid out from start to finish. Everything from the interviews to the matches. My entertainment doesn't roll like that, guys. I'm sorry. I need spontaneity. I need chaos because chaos is the natural order of the universe, as we've been talking about. I need that. I don't need a cheesy Marvel corporate movie featuring wrestlers. I just can't do it. I need the blood and the guts. I mean, look at that. Look at that. 11 years old, I was looking at stuff like that. And of course the ad on the back, man, they don't make ads like that anymore, dudes. Harry agrees. The insult that made a man out of Mac. Graphically stunning in its simplicity and its beauty. All hand-drawn, all handwritten, kids. They literally don't make it like this anymore. Bruno whips Von Erich. Single-handedly. I could be here all day. I got to be careful to move on to the next thing because we're kind of running out of time. There were two more very important developments in my life. And I've talked about this one before in depth when I got into rock and roll and discovered Cream magazine. This was not the first issue of Cream that I ever had, but it is the issue where I first laid eyes on a certain full-page advertisement. And I got to tell you, I'll just reiterate briefly that one of the reasons why I loved Cream so much was that they were kind of like Mad Magazine. They were very smart, very funny. They knew their stuff, but they were completely irreverent. They did not honor or worship sacred cows. They knew what was good. They stood by what was good. And you could tell that they respected what was good, but they did not engage in idolatry. And they were so funny. But yes, my pal Doug Finkelstein sent me this issue of Cream magazine to replace the one that I lost many years ago that featured a certain full-page ad that literally changed my life. That one right there. I'm not talking about David Yo. I'm talking about that full-page ad for Are We Not Men, We Are Devo. Changed my life. And I bought it at the magazine rack at the drugstore. Come here, Harry. Harry's in danger of knocking over my entire AV setup here. He wants to make an appearance again. And just to fast forward a few more years, my discovery of punk rock, specifically DIY, independent punk rock, local punk rock, hardcore, if you will, that, of course, was the next step in my evolution, or de-evolution, if you wish. And the fact that there were publications that were also life changers, such as this one right here, kids, Maximum Rock and Roll. This is the very first issue of Maximum Rock and Roll I ever saw and ever bought. And it was at the, see, Harry digs it. What's up, little guy? This I found at the Immortal Open Books and Records in North Miami Beach, Florida. I was just getting into punk and getting into the hardcore aspect of punk rock, the non-major label, non-corporate aspect of it. And this magazine was the living, breathing voice and embodiment of the spirit of DIY, underground, non-hardcore, non-corporate hardcore and punk. This, my friends, was a big game changer. And this was the first issue I ever saw. Completely blew my mind that you could open this up and see things like the scene reports. Scene reports? What does that even mean? You mean people could just write in and talk about local bands from their part of the world and venues to play? And you mean there's stuff like this happening in incredibly exotic, weird foreign places like Washington, D.C. and God, Virginia, New York City. I mean, I was still firmly rooted in the Florida suburbs at this time, but God, never mind. Japan? You mean there's music like this in Japan? I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. Absolute eye-opener and game changer. And from this is cover dated January, February 1984. And I think their cover dates were more accurate than the big guys. So it probably did come out at least in early 84, maybe late 83. But man, from 84, pretty much up until the time that the landlord tossed us out of our storefront in 2007, I basically never missed an issue of Maximum Rock and Roll. And that just opened up the vistas, the horizons of a whole new sort of culture. I'll say it again, non-corporate, not big business, DIY. And because of Maximum Rock and Roll, I was able to start doing what I do today, start a record label, be in a touring band. You know, very, very important. So kudos to all of the above who I just discussed. And kudos to you guys for tuning in and digging what I'm saying. I see the thumbs ups and the hearts and everything, but I don't see the comments. If you guys have been commenting, for some reason, they're not showing up on my monitor. So I'm going to have to go back when I sign off and read them and respond to you guys at a later date. But I can see that you're watching. I do appreciate that you watch and listen to me go blah, 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 blah for an hour about stuff. As always, I draw your attention to my Discogs, eBay, and Bandcamp, which is under the name TPOS. If you haven't gotten enough Tent Talks tunes yet, go to my YouTube channel and check out some back episodes. I got a whole bunch of them uploaded, and I will be uploading tonight's in just a few minutes. So, yay! Hope to see you guys at one of these fine events coming up, or maybe just at random somewhere out there in the so-called real world. Either way, it's all good. I do fully intend to be back in about 167 hours. So until we meet again, this is Malcolm Tent. And of course, Harry the Cat, saying so long from the Nutmeg State.